On September 18th, 2025, two seemingly impossible things happened within just 72 hours. Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula shook with a magnitude 7.8 earthquake, the latest in a devastating sequence that had begun in July. Entire towns trembled, and seismic monitors painted the region in crimson warnings. But 3 days earlier, Earth itself was struck by a G3 geomagnetic storm as our sun awakened violently from its 11-year slumber. Coincidence? Perhaps. But then came the third player in this cosmic drama. 3I Atlas, the interstellar visitor, a body not born of our solar system, now hurtling toward our star with a plasma coma expanding to nearly half the sun's size, growing larger every day. For better or for worse, we are witnessing a convergence of events never recorded in human history. Stay with me tonight as we unravel whether this is random chance or something far more interconnected than science has dared to admit. The tremors of Earth are multiplying. This is not speculation, but fact. Seismographs across the globe have lit up with abnormal frequency. Earthquakes are not only striking along familiar lines, but appearing in clusters, in chains, with intervals too narrow to ignore. When scientists charted their timing, a disturbing rhythm emerged. Tremors followed bursts of solar activity, as if the Earth itself were responding to storms on its star. For years, such patterns were dismissed as coincidence, a quirk of statistics. But the arrival of 3I Atlas has forced the question into sharper focus. The sun, long predicted to remain calm, erupted in unusual strength as the interstellar object drew near. And within days, Earth responded not with silence, but with quakes. Here lies the tension. Tectonic plates shift from forces beneath. Molten rock, pressure, stress accumulated over centuries. That is the science we know. But what if the sun's sudden awakening is adding to the strain? What if an interstellar object carrying fields of plasma and magnetic disturbances can ripple through the sun and, by extension, through us? And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling possibility is that these are not isolated events, not accidents, but the first threads of a chain stretching from deep space, through the heart of our star, down to the ground beneath our feet. If this chain is real, then the Earth is not trembling on its own terms. It is trembling to a cosmic rhythm, one that has only just begun to play. The sun is not constant. To us, it feels eternal. The same golden light rising every morning, the same warmth on our skin. But beneath that calm surface lies a churning ocean of plasma, magnetic storms and cycles as old as the star itself. For centuries, humanity has tried to map its rhythm, to understand the waxing and waning of its activity. And just as we believed we could predict its quiet slumber, it awakened violently. The hook comes with force. The latest solar cycle was expected to be weak, calm, uneventful. Instead, it has roared to life with flares, coronal mass ejections, and storms strong enough to rattle our planet's magnetic shield. And curiously, these eruptions have begun to align with a rise in seismic activity. Earthquakes, long believed to be independent of the sun, are now following its pulse. Here lies the conflict. The scientific consensus has long separated geology from astronomy. Tectonic plates are driven by heat from Earth's core, not by storms on the sun. And yet, the data refuses to be ignored. When the sun releases its charged particles, the Earth trembles days later. The patterns are too frequent, too sharp, to dismiss as mere chance. Some researchers whisper of electromagnetic coupling, that the energy unleashed by solar storms does more than dance in auroras. It penetrates, disrupts, shifts. The Earth's crust, already strained by centuries of pressure, may need only the smallest nudge to break. Could the sun itself, stirred by 3I Atlas, be applying that nudge? And here comes the mini-climax. If the sun is truly tied to the Earth in this way, then every solar outburst becomes more than light in the sky. It becomes a warning, a tremor yet to come, a fracture waiting to happen. The ground beneath us may not be as separate from the heavens as we once believed. Instead, it may be part of a cosmic chain, where the fire of a distant star can decide the fate of mountains, oceans, and cities. This thought unsettles because it collapses the walls we have built between earth and sky. We imagined ourselves shielded, geology below and astronomy above, separate realms. But if 3I Atlas has begun to stir the sun, and the sun in turn stirs the earth, then the safety of that separation is gone. We are not isolated. We are entangled. And yet, there is also wonder here. To live in such a web is to recognize the fragility and beauty of our place. The earth does not exist in silence, but in resonance, a note struck by cosmic forces far beyond us. To feel the ground tremble is to hear an echo of the stars. So the question is not only whether earthquakes are multiplying, but whether they are part of a larger rhythm, one that begins not beneath us, but above, in the restless heart of the sun. The numbers do not lie. Earthquakes are not only increasing, they are clustering in patterns too sharp to ignore. Over the past decade, seismic events above magnitude 6.0 have multiplied at a rate far beyond historical averages. Entire regions once quiet have begun to stir. Places that endured centuries without major activity are now trembling again. The hook strikes with force. Japan, Chile, Turkey, Alaska, all have reported surges not just in frequency but in rhythm. Some quakes arrive days apart, others in precise intervals following bursts of solar storms. The Kamchatka Peninsula, scarred already by fire and ice, has become a point of violent repetition, as if the ground there is tuned to some greater resonance. Here lies the conflict. Traditional geology explains earthquakes as pressure built over centuries, released unpredictably along fault lines. That randomness has been the shield of science. We cannot know when, only that one will come. But the new data disrupts that comfort. The clustering aligns not only with terrestrial stress, but with extraterrestrial rhythms, spikes of solar wind, geomagnetic storms, bursts of activity that seem to press on Earth from without. Skeptics argue coincidence. They warn against pattern seeking where none exists. And yet, the alignments repeat too often. One storm, one quake. Perhaps coincidence. 10 storms, 10 quakes within days of each other. The probability stretches belief. The data forces us to consider what science resists, that Earth's trembling may not be entirely its own. Researchers in seismology and astrophysics, once separate, now find themselves sharing the same charts. Solar observatories and earthquake monitors produce graphs that echo each other, peaks mirrored across disciplines. Some whisper that the sun is not the source, but the amplifier. And behind the sun, a greater shadow looms, 3I Atlas, its presence deepening the storm. And here comes the mini-climax. The terrifying realization is that we may be living in the opening act of a larger cycle. If earthquakes and solar storms are linked, then the arrival of 3I Atlas has already begun rewriting the rules of both. Each quake is no longer just Earth adjusting to its own stress. Each quake may be a message, a warning tremor in a cosmic dialogue that humanity has barely begun to hear. This thought unsettles because it suggests we are not only victims of terrestrial forces, but of cosmic tides. The ground beneath our feet is no longer local. It is connected to the rhythms of a star, stirred by a wanderer from between the stars. We are not separate from the universe. We are at its mercy. And yet, there is perspective here too. To see these patterns is to step beyond fear into awe. The same data that terrifies also connects. To know that earthquakes may follow the pulse of the sun is to glimpse a unity larger than ourselves, a unity we do not control, but can begin to understand. So the question lingers, if this chain continues, what comes next? Will the tremors grow with the storms, rising toward a crescendo as 3I Atlas draws nearer? Or are we only imagining harmony where there is none? 3I Atlas is unlike anything we have ever observed in recorded history. It does not belong to our solar system. It was not born from the dust of our sun, nor shaped by the familiar dance of planets and comets we know. It comes from beyond, from the silent gulf between stars. Its very name tells us so. 3I, the third known interstellar object to cross our path. But this one is different. It is larger, stranger, and more dangerous. The hook strikes. Telescopes first caught sight of it as a faint blur, a moving smear against the constellations. At first, it resembled a comet, a bright head, a streaming tail. But as observations grew sharper, anomalies emerged. Its coma, the glowing shroud of gas and plasma, was not merely large. It was colossal, half the size of the sun, expanding still, glowing with a restless energy unlike any comet we have catalogued. Here lies the conflict. If 3I Atlas is simply a comet, its behavior defies physics. No comet should hold such mass, sustain such activity, or release plasma fields capable of influencing a star. Yet, to call it something else demands that science stretch beyond its comfort. Is it a fragment of a rogue planet, a shard from the birth of another system, or something even stranger, carrying properties we cannot yet define? Astronomers tracking its approach note disturbing coincidences. As it nears, solar activity surges beyond prediction. Flares burst, storms intensify, radiation hums at levels unseen in decades, and on Earth, as if in echo, the ground trembles more violently. It is as though this visitor from the interstellar dark has stirred not only the sun, but every sphere it touches along its path. Some scientists whisper of resonance, that 3I Atlas carries with it magnetic fields vast enough to disturb the delicate balance of our star. Others warn of plasma coupling, of energies that can ripple outward like tides pulling at the sun's corona and spilling into the planets beyond. Whatever the mechanism, the timing is too precise, the consequences too sharp to dismiss as coincidence. And here comes the mini-climax. The most unsettling truth is that we do not know what 3I Atlas truly is. It may be comet, it may be asteroid, it may be something that does not fit our categories at all. We are staring at an intruder with no precedent, no manual, and no certainty of what it will do next. And while it streaks closer to the heart of our solar system, its influence is already reaching us, shaking our world in ways we cannot yet predict or control. This thought unsettles because it strips away the illusion of understanding. We believe the solar system to be our home, mapped and charted, its dangers known. But 3I Atlas reminds us that the universe is wider, stranger, and far more indifferent than our science has prepared us for. It is not only a traveler, It is a disruption, a force rewriting the balance of star and stone alike. And yet, there is awe in this vision. To witness such an object is to glimpse the vastness of space made real. To know that across light years it has wandered, only now brushing past our sun, is to feel both fear and wonder. For better or worse, we are alive to see it, to ask what it means, and to confront how fragile the boundary between Earth and cosmos truly is. Three forces now dominate the stage: Earth, the Sun, and Three-Eye Atlas. Alone, each is immense. The Earth, our fragile home, shaped by tectonic fire and ocean currents. The Sun, a star whose breath feeds every living thing, yet can scorch us with storms. And Three-Eye Atlas, the wanderer from beyond, an intruder whose arrival has disrupted what once felt stable. But together, these three form a chain of influence unlike anything we have recorded. The hook strikes, the ground trembles, the sky erupts, and the interstellar intruder draws nearer. Patterns once separate now overlap. Solar flares and geomagnetic storms mirror seismic surges. The timing is too sharp to ignore. Earth no longer feels like an isolated sphere. It feels like the third link in a cosmic dialogue, a dialogue whispered in fire, stone, and plasma. Here lies the conflict. Science has long divided disciplines. Astronomy studies the stars, geology studies the Earth, each in its domain, each with its models and boundaries. But now the boundaries are dissolving. The sun flares and Earth quakes. An interstellar object passes, and both tremble. If this chain is real, then the universe is not a collection of separate systems. It is a web where one tug can ripple through all. Researchers debate fiercely. Some insist it is still coincidence that the Earth's plates move on their own, indifferent to the sky. Others point to decades of anomalies, patterns too persistent to deny. And in the background, Three-Eye Atlas continues its approach, its coma swelling, its influence spreading invisibly across the solar system. And here comes the mini-climax. The terrifying possibility is that we are not only witnessing an event, but living inside it. Earthquakes multiplying, solar storms raging, an interstellar object blazing a path through our star. This is not a sequence of isolated accidents. It may be the first act of a larger convergence, one that binds Earth, Sun, and cosmos in a single unfolding storm. This thought unsettles because it dismantles our illusion of control. We believed our planet's dangers to be local: volcanoes, quakes, storms born of Earth alone. But if Three-Eye Atlas can awaken the sun, and the sun can stir the Earth, then our world is no longer only ours. It is part of a chain of forces too vast to shield against, too ancient to bargain with. And yet, there is wonder in this vision. To see Earth not as isolated, but as part of a greater cosmic rhythm, is to glimpse the unity of creation. The tremors beneath our feet may be terrifying, but they are also messages from the stars, reminders that even in danger, we are connected to something greater. So the question deepens. Is this convergence a passing disturbance or the beginning of a storm that will test the survival of all who live beneath the trembling ground and the restless sun? Science is built on walls, disciplines with boundaries, each guarding its territory of truth. Seismology studies the Earth. Astrophysics studies the stars. Each has its language, its methods, its models. For decades, earthquakes and solar storms occupied different shelves in the library of knowledge. But now, as tremors multiply in the wake of solar outbursts, those shelves are collapsing. The hook cuts sharply. Two camps now stand opposed. On one side, traditional seismologists insist that tectonic forces alone explain the rise in earthquakes. The Earth, they argue, is restless on its own terms. Stress builds, plates shift, and pressure releases in sudden violence. To link this to the sun, or to an interstellar visitor, they say, is to indulge in superstition disguised as science. On the other side, a smaller but growing group points to the data with unease. They note the clustering of quakes after geomagnetic storms. They show charts where solar flares spike, and days later, seismic monitors flare too. They argue that Earth and Sun are not separate systems, but parts of a single circuit bound by invisible fields of energy. And 3I Atlas, with its vast plasma coma, may be amplifying those fields to levels we have never measured before. Here lies the conflict. The debate is not only scientific, but philosophical. To admit a cosmic influence is to admit that Earth is less autonomous than we believed. It is to blur the boundaries between disciplines, to accept that geology and astronomy are not parallel, but entwined. Many resist this, fearing that it undermines decades of certainty. Others embrace it, seeing in the chaos a chance to glimpse a deeper order. Conferences grow heated. Papers are dismissed, then quietly cited. A rift forms in the scientific community itself, mirroring the rifts beneath the Earth's crust. And behind the arguments, the ground continues to shake. Data piles up faster than theories can contain it. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that both sides may be correct. Tectonic pressure builds independently, but perhaps it needs only a spark, a pulse from the sun amplified by an interstellar visitor to tip it over the edge. Earthquakes may be local in origin, but cosmic in timing. If so, then the safety of separation between earth and sky is gone. This thought unsettles because it reveals how fragile our categories are. We divide knowledge to make it manageable, but the universe is not divided. The sun does not care whether we call it astronomy. The earth does not care whether we call it geology. 3I Atlas does not care at all. These walls are ours, not nature's. And yet, there is wonder here. If Earth, Sun, and interstellar visitor are linked, then to study one is to glimpse the others. To feel the ground tremble may be to hear the echo of a storm on the sun, stirred by a traveler from the dark between stars. Knowledge is no longer divided, but unified, a web rather than a wall. So perhaps the question is not which side is right, but how long we can afford to argue while the earth continues to shake. Timing is everything. In science, patterns live or die by it. If two events align by chance, we dismiss them. But if they repeat again and again, the human mind cannot help but ask whether coincidence has given way to connection. With 3I Atlas drawn near, that question is no longer abstract. It is carved into the very rhythm of Earth itself. The hook strikes, solar flares erupt, and days later, the ground quakes. The pattern has repeated not once, not twice, but in sequence after sequence, as if Earth were following the sun's command. A coronal mass ejection on January 15th, followed by a 6.5 quake in Chile 2 days later. A solar storm on March 4th, followed by a 7.1 in Alaska within 72 hours. The list grows longer with each season, the timing too sharp to ignore. Here lies the conflict. Traditional models say the Earth's crust should not care about solar storms. Tectonic plates grind and slip on time scales of centuries, indifferent to plasma streaming from 93 million miles away. And yet, the timing refuses to dissolve into randomness. Each solar outburst seems to nudge the Earth's fragile balance closer to breaking. Some scientists suggest electromagnetic resonance, that the surge of charged particles from the sun alters Earth's magnetic field, which in turn affects stress along fault lines. Others whisper about piezoelectric effects, where rocks themselves respond subtly to shifts in the planet's field, making them more prone to fracture. None of these mechanisms are proven, but all point to one unsettling truth: the timing is too exact to dismiss. And behind the sun's erratic rhythm, another shadow looms: 3I Atlas. As the interstellar object closes in, the sun's cycle has accelerated beyond prediction, flaring with an intensity that caught even seasoned solar physicists by surprise. If 3I Atlas is amplifying the sun, then every quake may be part of a larger chain, one that begins far beyond our solar system. And here comes the mini-climax. The terrifying thought is not only that the pattern exists, but that it may grow stronger. If each solar eruption is a drumbeat and each earthquake a response, then the rhythm is quickening. What begins as scattered tremors may crescendo into something larger, a symphony of fire and stone conducted by forces we cannot stop. This thought unsettles because it strips away our illusion of randomness. We have long comforted ourselves with the idea that earthquakes strike without warning, without pattern. But if they are tied to the sun, then they are part of a cosmic rhythm, predictable yet unstoppable. The danger is no longer random, it is orchestrated. And yet, there is awe in this possibility. To see Earth and Sun linked so directly is to glimpse the unity of the cosmos. The tremor of a mountain may be the echo of a storm on a star. The timing, once terrifying, becomes also a reminder. We are not isolated. We are woven into a vast and living tapestry. So the question remains: if the rhythm continues to build, what kind of finale awaits us when 3I Atlas reaches its closest approach? Not all parts of Earth tremble equally. Some regions lie quiet for centuries, while others shudder repeatedly, as if cursed. These regions are called seismic clusters, fault zones, where the crust releases its tension in flurries rather than in solitude. Under ordinary conditions, these clusters are well known: Japan's Pacific Trench, the San Andreas Fault, the Andes. But since the arrival of 3I Atlas and the sun's awakening, one region has begun to dominate the maps with a new and disturbing ferocity: Kamchatka. The hook strikes. In just a few months, the Kamchatka Peninsula has recorded a sequence of quakes that would normally span decades. Magnitude 6.5, then 7.1, then 7.8, each building upon the last, each echoing solar storms days earlier. Seismographs hum without rest, and residents live in a world where the ground beneath their feet is no longer stable, but a restless drumbeat. Here lies the conflict. Kamchatka is no stranger to earthquakes. It lies on the volatile Pacific Ring of Fire, where plates grind relentlessly. But the current activity is abnormal, too rapid, too violent, and too precisely timed with solar and cosmic events to ignore. Scientists debate whether this is natural escalation or whether cosmic influences are amplifying stress that would otherwise have released slowly. Other clusters tell similar stories. In Turkey, in South America, in Alaska, quakes follow in strange synchrony, like instruments playing to the same invisible conductor. But Kamchatka remains the loudest, the clearest signal, a place where Earth, Sun, and Cosmos seem to speak most directly. And here comes the mini-climax. The haunting thought is that these clusters may not be random hotspots, but nodes in a network, places where the Earth is most sensitive to solar and cosmic nudges. If so, then watching Kamchatka is not only watching one region tremble, it is watching the entire planet's vulnerability revealed in concentrated form. This thought unsettles because it reframes earthquakes from local disasters into global symptoms. A tremor in Kamchatka may be more than regional misfortune. It may be the Earth's loudest response to forces acting across the solar system. Each quake is a message, each cluster a signal tower, reminding us that the planet is not isolated, but reactive. And yet, there is awe in this vision. To see seismic clusters as resonant nodes is to glimpse Earth itself as an instrument, tuned by forces larger than we can comprehend. The ground beneath us becomes not only stone, but sound, a vibration in a cosmic symphony where stars and interstellar wanderers strike the first notes. So the question is not only why Kamchatka trembles, but what it means for the rest of us. If clusters are amplifiers, then when the sun flares again, stirred by Three-Eye Atlas, what new music will the Earth play, and who among us will be left to listen? Explanations matter. Without them, patterns remain superstition, coincidences without meaning. If earthquakes are multiplying in rhythm with solar storms and the arrival of Three-Eye Atlas, then science must ask, how? What bridge could possibly connect a flare of plasma on the sun with the sudden fracture of stone deep beneath the Earth? The hook strikes. The answer may lie in fields we cannot see, but which shape every moment of our lives. Electromagnetism, gravity, resonance, invisible forces that bind particles, planets, and stars into a single web. The Earth is not immune to these forces. It is immersed in them. And when they shift, Earth responds, sometimes gently, sometimes with violence. Here lies the conflict. Traditional seismology insists that earthquakes are born entirely within the Earth. Stress builds as plates collide, heat rises from the mantle, and eventually rock yields. But this view ignores the layers of influence from above. The Earth's magnetic field shields us from solar radiation, but it also interacts constantly with solar wind. When storms strike, this shield vibrates, compresses, and expands. Some researchers argue that these fluctuations penetrate deeper than we think, subtly altering pressures within the crust. One proposed mechanism is electromagnetic induction. When solar particles flood Earth's field, they generate currents in the crust and mantle. Rocks, especially those rich in minerals, respond to these currents with tiny shifts, building stress where it was already close to breaking. Another theory points to piezoelectric effects. Quartz-bearing rocks, abundant along fault lines, produce electric charges under pressure. A surge in geomagnetic activity could amplify these charges, destabilizing regions already on the edge. And behind these theories, the presence of Three-Eye Atlas looms. Its plasma coma, vast enough to rival the sun's own size, may be distorting solar wind itself, redirecting or amplifying storms in ways never before observed. If the sun is the drum, then Three-Eye Atlas is the stick striking harder, faster, louder. The Earth, caught in the rhythm, cannot help but shake. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling realization is that we may be witnessing the first proof of a connection long suspected but never proven. That earthquakes, those most grounded of disasters, may be triggered not only from within, but from without. From storms on a star, from the passage of a cosmic visitor. The Earth is not closed. It is open, sensitive, reactive to forces across the void. This thought unsettles because it collapses the illusion of independence. We imagine Earth as a self-contained system, its dangers born of its own depths. But if solar storms and interstellar objects can tip the balance, then our world is far less autonomous than we believed. Our safety depends not only on what lies beneath, but on what moves above. And yet, there is awe in this vision too. To live in such a web is to recognize the unity of cosmos and planet. The same energies that threaten also sustain. Without the sun storms, there would be no auroras, no magnetic shield, no life itself. Without cosmic visitors, Earth would never have received the building blocks of water and carbon. To fear these forces is natural. To understand them is wisdom. So perhaps the real question is not whether these mechanisms exist, but whether humanity is ready to accept that the ground beneath its feet is part of a dialogue with the stars. What if Earth is not an isolated stage, but a single thread in a vast and intricate web? For centuries, humanity has drawn comfort from boundaries. Earth here, sky there, galaxies far away. The illusion of separation is a shield, convincing us that what happens in the depths of space cannot touch the soil beneath our feet. But the multiplication of earthquakes, the awakening of the sun, and the arrival of Three-Eye Atlas all whisper the same unsettling truth. Earth may not be separate at all. The hook strikes. Imagine the cosmos as a single chain, each link tugging on the next. The motion of a comet disturbs a star. The storm of a star rattles a planet. The fracture of a planet ripples back outward, shifting the very balance of the system itself. In this view, Earth is not the center. It is not even independent. It is one node among billions, sensitive to the faintest pull from forces far away. Here lies the conflict. Science, for all its brilliance, is still young. We see connections in fragments. Gravity here, electromagnetism there, tectonics beneath, plasma above. But what if these are not separate at all? What if they are expressions of a single order we do not yet have the language to describe? The walls between disciplines give comfort, but they may blind us to the larger truth. The universe is not divided. It is whole, and this whole is merciless. If Earth is a node, then it is vulnerable. It does not control the chain. It responds to it. A storm on the sun becomes a tremor in the Andes. A passing interstellar object becomes fire on Kamchatka's ridges. We are not shielded. We are connected. And in that connection lies both our danger and our meaning. And here comes the mini-climax. The haunting thought is that the cosmos may not even notice us. To Earth, an earthquake is catastrophe. To the chain, it is nothing but resonance, a vibration lost among countless others. We live and die in echoes too small to matter, even as they define our entire existence. To be a node in the chain is to be real, but also to be forgotten by the vastness that surrounds us. This thought unsettles because it removes the illusion of importance. We are not the masters of Earth, much less the cosmos. We are tenants of a system that moves with or without us. The tremors beneath our feet may not be personal warnings, but simple byproducts of forces unimaginably larger. And yet, there is wonder too. To be part of the chain is to belong. We are not outside of the universe, but inside it, woven into its fabric. The same forces that terrify us also sustain us. The energy that shakes our cities is the energy that births stars. The plasma that disrupts satellites is the plasma that gave us light and life. So perhaps the question is not whether Earth is isolated, but whether we are ready to accept what it means to be connected, to live not as rulers, but as participants, not as separate, but as bound, not as the center, but as a thread in the infinite tapestry of the cosmos. The sun has its rhythm. For centuries, astronomers have tracked its 11-year cycle, the waxing and waning of sunspots, the breathing of a star. At its peak, the sun flares with storms and eruptions. At its minimum, it falls into calm, almost silent. This rhythm has held for as long as science has measured, as dependable as the seasons. Until now. The hook strikes. In recent years, the sun has broken its own rules. Predictions of a quiet cycle were shattered by unexpected violence. Sunspots surged beyond forecasts. Coronal mass ejections erupted with unusual force. Magnetic fields twisted into storms unseen in decades. And at the center of this anomaly, another presence appeared. 3I Atlas, the interstellar wanderer whose arrival coincided with the sun's sudden awakening. Here lies the conflict. Conventional astrophysics says the sun is too massive, too self-contained, to be influenced by a passing object. Its storms are born of its own convulsions, driven by plasma and magnetism deep within. And yet, the timing is undeniable. As 3I Atlas drew nearer, the sun grew restless. Its flares increased in frequency and intensity, as though provoked. Coincidence? Or evidence of a link science has not dared to imagine? Some researchers speculate that 3I Atlas carries a magnetic field vast enough to disturb the sun's outer layers. Others suggest its plasma coma, swelling to nearly half the sun's size, may act like a mirror, reflecting and amplifying the star's own energy back upon itself. Whatever the mechanism, the result is clear. The sun is not behaving as it should, and this matters more than abstract science. When the sun stirs, Earth feels it. Each flare bombards our atmosphere, rattling satellites, disrupting power grids, painting auroras across the poles. But now, those solar storms seem to trigger something deeper. Earthquakes, tremors, patterns in stone itself. If 3I Atlas has indeed awakened the sun, then the consequences are not only cosmic, they are terrestrial. And here comes the mini-climax. The haunting realization is that we may be witnessing the first recorded case of interstellar influence on a star, and through it, on a planet. This is not just astronomy. It is geology, climate, survival. If true, then Earth is not only bound to its star, but vulnerable to wanderers that pass through, each carrying the potential to disturb the balance of life itself. This thought unsettles because it forces us to see the sun as fragile, not eternal. We think of it as a constant, a stable anchor for all existence. But if even the sun can be stirred by a passing traveler, then nothing in the universe is immune to influence. Stability is not the rule, it is the illusion. And yet, there is awe in this revelation. To see the sun not as isolated, but as part of a wider network, is to glimpse the living cosmos, stars, planets, comets, wanderers, all bound, all responsive, all alive in their own ways. The sun, the source of our days, is not only our giver of life, it is also a participant in a drama that stretches across the galaxy. So perhaps the true question is not whether 3I Atlas has awakened the sun, but what other forces, unseen and unmeasured, have shaped our world before and will shape it again. Science thrives on patterns. It does not settle for mystery. It demands models, equations, explanations. As earthquakes multiplied, as the sun broke its cycle, as 3I Atlas streaked nearer, researchers began building frameworks to test what seemed unthinkable. that these three forces were linked. The hook strikes, teams across the globe, from Tokyo to Geneva, from Moscow to Pasadena, began pouring data into models, seismographs, solar observatories, magnetometers, even deep space telescopes, tracking 3I Atlas. The goal was simple: to ask whether the timing was random or whether probability itself was cracking under the weight of coincidence. Here lies the conflict. Traditional models treat Earth as closed. Quakes are internal, cycles self-contained. The Sun, though violent, is modeled in 11-year rhythms, independent of passing objects. And interstellar wanderers? They were curiosities, not forces. But when scientists mapped events side by side, the alignment struck like a revelation. Peaks of solar activity followed the approach of 3I Atlas. Peaks of seismic activity followed those solar storms. The chain was not perfect, but it was sharp enough to disturb. Statistical studies added weight. In one paper, researchers calculated that the odds of so many solar flares coinciding with seismic surges were less than 1 in 1,000. Another team suggested the correlation was closer to 1 in 10,000. Such probabilities defy comfort. They force the question, if this is not chance, then what is the mechanism? Hypotheses emerged. One model suggested resonance, that 3I Atlas, with its plasma field, distorted solar winds in ways that amplified geomagnetic storms. Those storms, in turn, pushed Earth's magnetic shield into spasms, which induced currents in the crust. Another model proposed gravitational nudging. While small, 3I Atlas's mass might resonate with the Sun's pull, subtly altering solar output. Critics called these models speculative, fragile, but the data pressed onward, refusing to dissolve. And here comes the mini-climax. The most unsettling outcome of the models was not that they proved the connection, but that they could not rule it out. Science, which prides itself on certainty, found itself staring into a void where probability bent toward the extraordinary. We may be witnessing the first statistical fingerprints of interstellar influence, hidden not in starscapes, but in the fractures of stone beneath our feet. This thought unsettles, because it blurs the line between knowledge and myth. Once, ancient cultures saw earthquakes as messages from gods, the earth trembling to the will of the heavens. Science dismissed such stories as superstition. But now, data itself seems to whisper the same link, though in the language of plasma, magnetism, and probability. The myth is not returning. It is being rewritten. And yet, there is awe, too. To watch humanity build models that stretch across disciplines is to see science at its most alive. Seismologists and astrophysicists, geologists and plasma physicists, all staring at the same puzzle, not competing, but converging. The walls of knowledge are cracking, but through those cracks comes light. So perhaps the question is not whether these models are correct, but whether they mark the first step toward a new understanding, one where Earth, Sun, and the interstellar dark are not separate stories, but chapters of a single book we are only beginning to read. History is not only memory, it is data, written in ruins, in records, in scars carved into stone and ice. If the Sun and Earth are connected, if 3I Atlas is amplifying that hidden link, then perhaps echoes of similar connections lie in the past. Moments when the heavens stirred and the earth responded, leaving behind fragments of a forgotten dialogue. The hook strikes. One of the clearest examples comes from 1859, the Carrington event. A solar flare unlike any recorded before erupted from the Sun, striking Earth with magnetic violence. telegraph wires sparked into fire. Auroras danced as far south as the Caribbean. And in the years that followed, seismic records showed anomalies, earthquakes clustering strangely, as if the planet itself had echoed the star's outburst. Here lies the conflict. Most historians of science dismiss these alignments as chance. Earthquakes happen often enough that some will always follow solar storms. But when researchers dug deeper, patterns emerged. The 1908 Tunguska explosion, long attributed to a meteor, coincided with a period of intense solar activity. The 1960 Valdivia earthquake in Chile, the strongest ever measured at magnitude 9.5, arrived within days of a solar storm that rattled Earth's magnetic field. Again and again, the rhythm flickers into view, and older still are the whispers of myth. Ancient Chinese chronicles speak of the sky burning red before the ground shook. Mayan inscriptions describe serpents of fire across the heavens, followed by floods and quakes. Norse sagas tell of Fimbul winter, when the sun dimmed and the earth trembled before the end of an age. These are not scientific records, but they are memories, imperfect, symbolic, but insistent. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling thought is that humanity may have lived through these cosmic convergences before, recording them not in data, but in stories. Myths of gods throwing fire, legends of the sky collapsing. These may be cultural fossils of real events, moments when the sun flared and the earth shook in unison. What we dismiss as myth may be the first language in which this chain was described. This thought unsettles because it erases the wall between past and present. We like to believe that our age is unique, that our data makes us immune to superstition. But perhaps we are only rediscovering what our ancestors already knew in a different form, that the heavens and the earth do not move in isolation, but together. And yet, there is awe in this continuity. To imagine humanity across millennia, staring at the same trembling ground and restless sky, is to feel part of something larger than history itself. We are not the first to notice the rhythm. We may not be the last. So perhaps the true question is not whether these connections existed in the past, but why they are resurfacing now, with 3I Atlas blazing its path across our star. Are we witnessing a rare accident or the return of a cycle that has always shaped the fate of worlds? Humanity lives between two instincts, the hunger for certainty and the pull of mystery. When earthquakes multiply and the sun flares beyond expectation, when ancient myths seem to echo the present, these instincts collide. Some demand explanations rooted in science. Others lean toward stories older than logic. And caught in between is a world trembling both underfoot and overhead. The hook strikes. In scientific circles, the response has been cautious, even defensive. Peer-reviewed journals resist bold claims. Conferences echo with skepticism. To link solar storms and seismic surges is to risk reputation, to step beyond the comfort of established boundaries. Most researchers cling to tectonic models, warning against correlation without causation. But even they cannot ignore the timing, the numbers, the repetition of events too precise to dismiss entirely. Here lies the conflict. As some scientists hedge, others push forward. A new generation of researchers, less afraid of crossing disciplinary walls, openly model the chain of sun, earth, and cosmos. They speak of resonance, of plasma interactions, of magnetic nudges. Their work is speculative, fragile, but it builds momentum. Slowly, the once taboo question, can the sun trigger earthquakes, begins to appear not only in fringe papers, but in respected institutions. Meanwhile, society responds with its own rhythm. In the media, headlines flash warnings of cosmic storms and the interstellar intruder. Online forums hum with speculation, some grounded in science, others drifting toward conspiracy. For the public, the line between data and myth is thin. Ancient stories of gods, modern fears of extinction, both rise in times of uncertainty. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling reality is that humanity may not be ready for the answer. If 3-Eye Atlas has truly awakened the sun, and if the sun in turn is stirring the earth, then the chain reveals our fragility in a way no one wants to face. It is easier to deny or to mythologize than to confront the truth. We are not isolated, and our survival depends on forces beyond our control. This thought unsettles because it touches on the limits of human culture itself. Science resists what it cannot yet explain. Society embraces what it cannot yet prove. Between them lies a gap, and in that gap, fear grows. Earthquakes shake not only the ground, but the confidence of civilizations built on the illusion of permanence. And yet, there is wonder here too. To watch science slowly bend toward questions once considered myth is to see knowledge evolve. To see societies search for meaning in chaos is to glimpse the enduring human spirit, fragile, yes, but also relentless in its need to connect dots, to tell stories, to make sense of tremors in both stone and sky. So perhaps the question is not whether humanity believes, but how it adapts. Will we hide behind skepticism or myth, or will we accept the possibility of a universe more entangled, more alive than we dared imagine? The earth is never still. Beneath its crust lies a slow-motion ocean of molten rock, currents of mantle dragging continents across eons. Tectonic plates grind and collide, slipping, locking, and fracturing. This motion is relentless, older than life itself. And yet, for all its power, it is also fragile, balanced between calm and catastrophe. At times, all it takes is the smallest push to release centuries of strain. The hook strikes. Scientists call this state critical stress. Imagine a bowstring pulled tighter and tighter. For years, it holds. But touch it with a single finger at the right moment, and it snaps. In the same way, fault lines around the world are already primed with pressure, waiting. A tremor, a fluctuation, even an external nudge can decide when and how the bowstring breaks. Here lies the conflict. Traditional seismology accepts that small triggers, like the collapse of a mine, the filling of a reservoir, even the tidal pull of the moon, can sometimes initiate quakes. If local forces can act as triggers, then why not cosmic ones? Why not the pulse of a solar storm, amplified by 3-Eye Atlas, pressing down on an Earth already poised on the edge? The bowstring does not care what finger snaps it. It only cares that it breaks. Critics resist this view, warning against attributing too much to external causes. They argue that earthquakes release energy equal to nuclear weapons. To say that a storm from the sun caused them is to exaggerate. But proponents counter, it is not about adding energy, but about timing. The energy is already there, coiled in the crust. All it needs is the smallest nudge, a spark, a tremor, a shift in electromagnetic balance, to cascade into devastation. And here comes the mini-climax. The haunting thought is that Earth is filled with such hidden bowstrings, fault lines stretched to their limit. If cosmic forces truly act as triggers, then every solar storm, every fluctuation caused by 3-Eye Atlas may be pulling invisible strings across the globe. each tug risks releasing centuries of pressure in seconds. What appears as random chaos may be the universe itself, choosing when the bowstrings snap. This thought unsettles because it makes the Earth feel less like solid ground and more like a fragile machine ticking toward inevitable failure. We build our cities, our monuments, our civilizations on this crust, believing it to be permanent. Yet beneath, tensions wait, and above, forces stir them. We stand in the middle, fragile as shadows, and yet there is wonder here too. To see Earth as responsive rather than isolated is to understand it as alive. The crust is not passive stone, but a living system, sensitive to tides of gravity and magnetism, to whispers from the sun, even to the passage of an interstellar wanderer. To live here is to exist in dialogue with the cosmos, not in control, but in participation. So perhaps the question is not whether the Earth is triggered by the heavens, but how often it has been, and how often it will be again. Power does not like uncertainty. When the ground trembles, when the sun erupts, when whispers of cosmic influence spread, governments respond not only with science, but with politics. Disasters are not only geological, they are social, economic, and strategic. And when the narrative of control begins to fracture, leaders scramble to hold it together. The hook strikes. In recent years, as earthquakes multiplied and solar storms intensified, official statements remained cautious. Agencies reassured the public that tectonics were local, predictable only in averages, unaffected by distant wanderers like Three-Eye Atlas. But behind closed doors, intelligence briefings told a different story. Monitoring of solar activity increased, military satellites were shielded, emergency drills multiplied. Public calm, private urgency, here lies the conflict. On one side, governments fear panic. To admit that earthquakes might be triggered by forces from the sun and beyond is to admit helplessness. No policy, no border, no army can protect against the cosmos. On the other side, silence erodes trust. Each disaster fuels speculation, and each denial deepens suspicion. In the space between official calm and lived chaos, conspiracy grows. Evidence of secrecy surfaces. Documents leaked from international agencies suggest quiet collaboration, seismic and solar data shared across nations, emergency protocols drafted in case of cosmic resonance events. Some claim even space agencies have modeled scenarios where Three-Eye Atlas could amplify the sun into a cascade of storms, with Earth trembling in their wake. Officials deny, yet preparations continue. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling reality is that governments may be preparing for a future they refuse to name. Stockpiles of supplies, hardened infrastructure, silent drills, all hint at recognition that the ground beneath us may no longer be stable, that the heavens themselves have entered the equation of national security. To the public, it is reassurance. To the few who see deeper, it is evidence of fear. This thought unsettles because it shows the fragility of the systems we trust. We imagine governments as protectors, planners, controllers, yet in the face of cosmic forces, they are as vulnerable as anyone else. The illusion of mastery crumbles, revealing not certainty, but improvisation. Leaders do not control the tremors. They only manage the stories told about them. And yet, there is also perspective here. To see nations quietly unite in monitoring, to watch rival powers share data in the shadow of a greater threat, is to glimpse the rare possibility of cooperation born from vulnerability. Earthquakes and solar storms care nothing for borders. Perhaps, for once, humanity is being reminded that it too belongs to the same fragile ground, the same trembling world. So perhaps the question is not whether governments are hiding the truth, but whether they themselves can bear it, that we are no longer only threatened by Earth, but by the universe itself, moving with a rhythm that does not pause for kings or presidents. Fear is older than fire. It is not only an emotion, but a survival tool etched into our biology long before cities rose or books were written. We fear the unknown, the uncontrollable, the vast forces that remind us how fragile we are. And few realizations cut deeper than this, that our world, our homes, even our bodies may be shaped not only by what lies beneath our feet, but by storms millions of miles away or by a wanderer from the interstellar dark. The hook strikes. When the ground shakes, fear is immediate. Buildings sway, lights fall, people run. But when the sky itself becomes the source, when solar storms flare, when news whispers of Three-Eye Atlas stirring the sun, fear becomes something more subtle, more corrosive. It is not just fear of death, it is fear of irrelevance, of helplessness in a universe that does not care whether we endure. Here lies the conflict. Humanity craves control. We build walls against floods, systems against famine, medicine against disease. We tame nature piece by piece, convincing ourselves we are masters of Earth. But how do we defend against a solar storm, against an interstellar object, against a chain that stretches from the stars to the crust itself? The tools that protect us seem suddenly small, and the illusion of mastery cracks. Philosophers have long wrestled with this paradox. The Stoics argued that fear arises from clinging to what we cannot control, and that peace comes from surrender. Existentialists saw fear as proof of freedom, the recognition that we stand alone in an uncaring cosmos, forced to choose meaning ourselves. And yet, for most, fear remains paralyzing, a reminder that beneath our stories of progress, we are still animals trembling in the dark. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that cosmic fear cannot be resolved. It cannot be fought, conquered, or banished. It can only be endured. The earthquakes do not care if we understand them. The sun does not quiet itself for our comfort. Three-Eye Atlas does not alter its course to spare our cities. To live in such a universe is to live without guarantees. Every sunrise is a gift, not a promise. This thought unsettles because it strips life to its raw edge. The technologies, the nations, the stories we tell, all are fragile veils over the reality that we are vulnerable to chance. We are creatures of a trembling planet, orbiting a restless star, in a galaxy where wanderers cross uninvited. Fear is not weakness in this context. It is honesty, and yet there is also wonder here. To acknowledge our fragility is not only to despair, but to marvel. Against such odds, against such indifference, we exist. We love, we build, we tell stories. We light fires in the dark, not because we control the night, but because we do not. Perhaps this is the deepest meaning of fear, not paralysis, but awareness. A reminder that every quiet moment, every day without tremors, every calm sky is a miracle too easily forgotten. So perhaps the question is not how to banish fear, but how to live alongside it, to let it sharpen our gratitude, deepen our humility, and remind us that even in a trembling universe, there is beauty worth enduring for. To understand is to watch. Humanity cannot control the trembling earth or the raging sun, but it can observe, measure, and record. The tools of science are not shields, but eyes, fragile instruments stretched across a vast cosmos, straining to catch signals before they vanish. If earthquakes are multiplying as the sun awakens under the shadow of 3I Atlas, then our only defense is knowledge gathered in real time. The hook strikes. Around the world, an invisible web of instruments hums. Seismographs buried in bedrock record every vibration, from the collapse of a mine to the snap of a tectonic plate. Magnetometers track fluctuations in Earth's shield, watching for the invisible storms of charged particles. Solar observatories, both ground-based and orbiting in space, stare unblinking at the sun, mapping every flare, every eruption. And at the edges of this network, deep space telescopes follow 3I Atlas, a moving blur of plasma and ice hurtling toward the heart of our star. Here lies the conflict. These instruments collect more data than humanity can easily interpret. Terabytes of signals, spikes, and noise flow each day. Patterns hide within the chaos, waiting to be seen. But the challenge is immense: to connect vibrations of stone with pulses of light, to trace cause and effect across millions of miles. The risk is misinterpretation, seeing patterns where there are none, or missing patterns that matter most. New technologies rise to meet this challenge. Artificial intelligence scans seismic data, hunting for anomalies that human eyes might overlook. Satellites in orbit form constellations, cross-referencing geomagnetic shifts in near real time. Even quantum sensors, still experimental, promise to detect the faintest whispers of gravitational change before a quake breaks free. Slowly, Earth and sky are being stitched into a single map of resonance. And yet, for all the power of these tools, they are fragile. A solar storm can blind satellites. An earthquake can topple observatories. The very forces we seek to study threaten the instruments we rely on. Watching the chain means standing within it, vulnerable to the same blows. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that even with all our tools, we may still be blind. We can measure tremors and flares, but we cannot predict the next act of 3I Atlas, nor the exact moment when pressure beneath the Earth will yield. Our instruments show us the dance, but not the outcome. Knowledge gives perspective, not control. This thought unsettles because it reminds us that technology, though powerful, is not omnipotent. We imagine satellites and sensors as guardians, but they are only scribes, recording the story as it unfolds. They do not change the plot. They only reveal it. And yet, there is awe in this watchfulness. To see humanity weave a net of machines around Earth and sky is to glimpse our resilience. Fragile as we are, we reach outward, building instruments to extend our senses, daring to listen to the rhythm of the cosmos. Each seismograph tick, each flare captured on film, each faint trace of 3I Atlas is a reminder that we are not blind. We are small, but we are watching. So perhaps the question is not whether our tools can save us, but whether they can teach us to live with open eyes, to see the trembling of Earth not as chaos, but as part of a larger pattern, one we are only beginning to understand. Science does not move easily. It is a discipline of caution, of skepticism, of demanding proof before belief. And yet, proof is never absolute. It comes in fragments, probabilities, hints, hidden in noise. When those hints involve something as extraordinary as an interstellar object influencing the sun, and through it, the Earth, the tension becomes almost unbearable. The hook strikes. In labs and observatories, researchers argue late into the night. Some insist the data is clear, that 3I Atlas has coincided too precisely with the sun's awakening, and that the earthquakes multiplying across Earth are echoes of this cosmic disturbance. Others reject the claim outright, warning that to admit such influence is to leap beyond evidence into speculation. Journals refuse some papers, while others slip through peer review, fueling a quiet storm in academic circles. Here lies the conflict. To declare that an interstellar object can affect the sun is to rewrite the boundaries of astrophysics itself. To suggest that the sun, in turn, can trigger earthquakes is to redraw the lines of geology. Two walls would fall at once, and the map of science would shift forever. Some fear this collapse. Others crave it, seeing in the cracks the chance to glimpse a deeper order. Behind closed doors, private discussions grow sharper. Satellite data shows correlations too sharp to dismiss, but the mechanism remains elusive. Correlation is not causation, skeptics repeat. But how many times must the rhythm repeat before chance loses its power? How many storms followed by quakes before coincidence collapses into connection? And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling reality is that science itself is trembling, just like the Earth it studies. The community is divided not by lack of evidence, but by fear of what that evidence might mean. If they admit the chain, three-eye atlas, the sun, the earth, then humanity must face a truth it has long resisted. We are not in control, and the cosmos is less stable than we believed. This thought unsettles because it forces us to confront the philosophy beneath science itself. We seek certainty, but certainty is fragile. The universe does not promise clarity. It offers only signals, incomplete and ambiguous. To demand perfect proof before belief may be safe, but it may also blind us to truths unfolding in real time. And yet, there is wonder here too. Debate is not failure. It is the sign of science alive, of knowledge evolving. The fact that seismologists, astrophysicists, and plasma physicists now argue over the same data is extraordinary. Walls between disciplines are cracking, but through those cracks, ideas move freely. Even in conflict, understanding grows. So perhaps the question is not whether the scientific community will accept the influence of Three-Eye Atlas, but how long it will take, and whether, by the time they do, the Earth will still be trembling beneath our feet. For scientists, the debate unfolds in journals and conferences. For ordinary people, it unfolds in the heart. The tremor of the ground, the flash of auroras, the headlines whispering about Three-Eye Atlas, these are not equations, but experiences. They intrude into daily life, shaking confidence not only in the Earth, but in the order of the cosmos itself. The hook strikes. In towns rattled by quakes, fear is immediate and visceral. Families flee their homes, children wake screaming at night, and every aftershock feels like a reminder that safety is only temporary. But when the news ties these tremors to solar storms, when whispers spread that an interstellar visitor might be stirring the sun, fear becomes something larger. It is no longer just the ground, it is the sky. Here lies the conflict. Ordinary people crave explanations that make sense, that restore some measure of control. Some find comfort in science, in the idea that these are coincidences, that tectonic forces alone explain the shaking. Others drift toward myth and speculation, resurrecting old stories of gods and omens. Between them grows a quiet anxiety. If the experts themselves cannot agree, how can anyone feel secure? Psychologists call this cosmic anxiety, the unease that comes not from local threats, but from forces vast and indifferent. It is not the fear of a collapsing building, but the fear that the universe itself is unstable. Unlike ordinary fear, it cannot be escaped. One cannot move away from the sun. One cannot flee the earth. It is not danger in one place, but danger everywhere. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that this kind of fear can erode societies. People turn inward, mistrusting governments, distrusting science, clinging to whatever stories give them comfort. Some retreat into denial, insisting nothing unusual is happening. Others exaggerate, predicting apocalypse with every tremor. Between these poles, calm truth becomes harder to hold. This thought unsettles because it shows that the real fault lines may not be in the crust, but in the human mind. Earthquakes fracture stone, but fear fractures communities. If the belief grows that the earth itself is at the mercy of cosmic forces, then the foundation of civilization, confidence and stability, begins to crack. And yet, there is resilience too. Across cultures, people find ways to transform fear into meaning. They share stories, light candles, rebuild homes, and reach out to one another. Fear isolates, but it also connects. The awareness that we are all vulnerable beneath the same sun, beneath the same trembling sky, can also remind us that we are not alone. So perhaps the question is not whether fear will spread, but what we choose to build with it. Division, denial, despair, or a deeper sense of unity in the face of a cosmos that trembles with us. The closer Three-Eye Atlas comes, the stranger it becomes. Interstellar objects are rare, and each one we have glimpsed, Oumuamua, Borisov, and now Atlas, has carried mysteries we could not explain. But Atlas is not fading into the distance. It is growing brighter, larger, more restless. Its coma of plasma now swells to a scale rivaling half the sun, and with each passing week, solar activity surges as if answering its approach. The hook strikes. Astronomers expected a dormant star, easing through the quiet valley of its 11-year cycle. Instead, they are watching a blaze. Sunspots erupt in swarms. Flares leap into space with violent frequency. Coronal mass ejections batter Earth's magnetic field in wave after wave, and each time the sun flares, the ground answers, tremors echoing in Chile, Japan, Kamchatka, Alaska. The chain is tightening. Here lies the conflict. If Atlas is truly influencing the sun, it defies everything astrophysics assumed about stellar resilience. Stars are titans, their mass dwarfing worlds, their stability anchoring systems. That a single wanderer from the void could rattle such a titan borders on heresy. And yet, the timing is merciless. With Atlas's approach, the sun has shifted into overdrive. To dismiss this as chance is to ignore the rhythm beating louder with every cycle. Some propose that Atlas carries magnetic fields vast enough to resonate with the sun's own, like tuning forks amplifying each other. Others suggest its coma, charged with plasma, interacts with solar wind in ways that reflect and amplify energy back into the star. These ideas strain the edges of known physics, but they attempt to answer a question that grows harder to avoid. Why now? Why this storm, this star, this trembling Earth, all in the shadow of Atlas? And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling possibility is that Atlas has not yet reached its peak. As it draws nearer, its influence may intensify, driving the sun into storms fiercer than anything seen in recorded history. If today's tremors are echoes of its early approach, then tomorrow's may be preludes to a crescendo, one that tests the limits of Earth's resilience. This thought unsettles because it removes the illusion of distance. We comfort ourselves with the idea that interstellar space is vast, that wanderers like Atlas pass silently. too far to matter. But the evidence suggests otherwise. A visitor we cannot touch, cannot stop, may already be rewriting the balance of our sun and earth. And yet, there is awe too. To witness such a convergence is to stand at the edge of discovery. For the first time in human history, we may be watching not only an interstellar traveler, but its direct influence on our own star, on our own trembling world. We are fragile, yes, but also privileged, alive at the moment when myth and science collide into a single story. So perhaps the real question is not whether Atlas is influencing the sun, but how much further this influence can reach, and whether humanity is prepared to endure the consequences of a chain that begins in the dark between stars and ends beneath our feet. Prediction is always fragile. The universe moves in patterns we only partially understand, and yet we are compelled to look ahead, to sketch possibilities even when certainty is beyond reach. With the sun restless, with earthquakes multiplying, and with 3-Eye Atlas drawing closer each day, scientists have begun to model not only the present, but the future. What if the trend continues? What if the star grows angrier as the interstellar wanderer deepens its approach? The hook strikes. In the mildest scenario, Earth will endure a cycle of storms and tremors more intense than usual, but survivable. Power grids may flicker under geomagnetic stress. Satellites may fail in bursts, forcing temporary blackouts in communication. Quakes may scar regions already vulnerable. Societies would adapt, rebuild, and carry on, shaken but intact. But the next scenario is darker. If the sun's activity doubles or triples in intensity, the storms could overwhelm infrastructure. Massive power outages could cascade across continents. Communication satellites, GPS systems, and even weather monitoring could fail for days or weeks. Earthquakes, triggered by the rhythm of solar outbursts, could strike in chains across fault zones, testing cities never built for such frequency. The disruption would not only be physical, but social. Panic spreading faster than tremors themselves. And here lies the conflict. The worst-case scenario. If Atlas amplifies the sun beyond anything in modern history, the storms could become catastrophic. Solar flares might hurl radiation strong enough to fry satellites, cripple global power grids, and render entire regions blind to technology. On Earth, chains of quakes could rise and sink, unleashing devastation across continents already strained by human fragility. In this vision, civilization does not simply tremble, it fractures. And here comes the mini-climax. The haunting truth is that none of these scenarios can be ruled out. The data shows a pattern, but not its ceiling. We may already be inside the first act of a drama that could peak in years or even months. The storm above may continue to grow, and the earth beneath may answer with a crescendo of violence. This thought unsettles because it places humanity in the role of witness, not actor. We are not writing the script. We are watching it unfold, powerless to intervene. Our defenses, walls, satellites, power grids are strong against storms of our own making, but fragile against storms born in the heart of a star stirred by a wanderer from the void. And yet there is awe as well. To live at such a time is to see the universe revealed not as static, but alive. To know that our sun, long thought stable, can be awakened by an object from beyond is to glimpse the true interconnectedness of creation. It is terrifying, but also extraordinary. A reminder that we are part of a cosmos vast enough to surprise us still. So perhaps the real question is not which scenario will unfold, but how we will face it, with fear, denial, or with the quiet resilience that has carried humanity through every storm before. The earth is not fixed. It is alive with motion, shifting in silence until suddenly it breaks into violence. Each earthquake is not only a tremor, but a sculptor, reshaping the face of the planet. When quakes multiply, the changes accelerate, leaving scars that alter not only the land, but the lives of those who walk upon it. The hook strikes. Coastlines shift as land rises or sinks by meters and minutes. Rivers change their course. Entire towns, once built on steady ground, tilt into ruin, their streets cracked and uneven. Mountains heave upward, their slopes fractured. In some places, islands are born overnight. In others, they vanish beneath the sea. With every quake, geography itself becomes unstable, as if the earth is rewriting its map. Here lies the conflict. These changes ripple outward far beyond the epicenters. A rising seabed alters tides. A sinking delta swallows farmland. Even the climate can be nudged as volcanic eruptions triggered by seismic chains inject ash into the atmosphere, dimming sunlight, cooling skies. The earth, in its trembling, touches everything: land, sea, air. No aspect of life is untouched, but the most profound changes may be psychological. For people, the ground is the ultimate certainty. We can fear storms, floods, and fires, but we trust the soil beneath us. When it betrays that trust, when it trembles again and again, anxiety grows like a second shadow. Sleep becomes fragile. Children learn fear before they learn words. Every rumble, every creak of a building feels like the opening act of another collapse. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that multiplying earthquakes fracture more than stone. They fracture the sense of permanence on which civilization is built. Cities depend on stability. Culture depends on confidence. When the ground itself cannot be trusted, society trembles along with it. The cracks spread not only through earth and walls, but through the human spirit. This thought unsettles because it reveals how much of human life is built on an illusion. We pretend the world is solid, unmoving, reliable. We draw maps as though the borders they show will last forever. But when the earth shakes, those maps are revealed for what they are: fragile sketches on shifting stone. Nothing is fixed, nothing is guaranteed. And yet, there is wonder here too. The same quakes that destroy also create. Mountains rise, valleys deepen, new springs emerge from fractured rock. Earthquakes remind us that the planet is not static, but alive, still shaping itself even as it carries us. To live through such change is terrifying, but also extraordinary. We are witnesses to the earth remaking itself, one tremor at a time. So perhaps the question is not whether quakes will change the land, but how humanity will adapt, whether we will cling to the illusion of permanence or learn to live with the truth of a world forever in motion. When the ground shakes, stories are born. Human beings do not live by stone alone. We live by meaning, by the narratives we weave to explain what we cannot control. For ancient civilizations, earthquakes became the voices of gods, the anger of giants, the footsteps of unseen beings. And in our age, though we speak the language of science, the instinct remains. We still tell stories, only now they echo with plasma, magnetism, and interstellar wanderers. The hook strikes. After the quakes of Kamchatka, myths re-emerged online almost instantly. Some spoke of ancient prophecies, of cycles foretold in forgotten manuscripts. Others framed Three-Eye Atlas not as comet, but as omen, a messenger of endings. Hashtags spread faster than seismographs, and fear found shape in narrative. Humanity does not tolerate silence. The void must always be filled with story. Here lies the conflict. Science resists this instinct, demanding proof before meaning. It warns against superstition, against false patterns. And yet, stories thrive because they give what science cannot: comfort, clarity, direction. A family huddling after an aftershock does not ask for statistical models. They ask for reasons, even if those reasons come wrapped in myth. But myths are not only escapes, they are mirrors of culture. In Japan, earthquakes evoke tales of Namazu, the giant catfish thrashing beneath the islands. In the Andes, they are Pachamama shifting her weight, demanding respect. In modern times, new myths rise, solar storms as warnings, interstellar objects as omens, the Earth herself as a living being restless with awakening. Each culture reframes the trembling, translating fear into story. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that these myths may outlast the data. Numbers fade from memory, but stories endure. Centuries from now, when the charts of 3I Atlas are forgotten, people may still speak of the time the Earth trembled with the sun, not as science, but as legend. What we record as data today may be retold as myth tomorrow. This thought unsettles because it reminds us how fragile knowledge is. Science seeks permanence, but memory bends toward story. What we think of as clarity may dissolve into symbols reshaped by fear and hope. Even our most precise instruments may one day become artifacts, their meaning reduced to whispers. And yet, there is beauty here too. To tell stories is to be human. Myths do not only distort, they preserve. Beneath their symbols lie fragments of truth, records of fire in the sky, of tremors in the earth, of cycles humanity felt but could not explain. If science is data, myth is memory. Together, they form the tapestry of how we endure the unknown. So perhaps the question is not whether myths will rise, but what they will teach. Will they be tales of fear alone, or of wonder? Stories reminding future generations that even in trembling, Earth was never silent, and humanity was never alone beneath the restless sky. The sun has always been the most constant presence in our lives. It rises, it sets, it warms, it nourishes. For millennia, it has been the measure of time, the clock of the sky. But today, the sun feels different. It is no longer simply a giver of light. It has become a source of unease, a restless star flaring and pulsing as if stirred by a hand from beyond. And many now wonder, is 3I Atlas that hand? The hook strikes. In recent months, astronomers have observed phenomena that defy the predictions of solar physics. Sunspots clustering in patterns never seen before, as if arranged in spirals. Flares rising not only in intensity, but in frequency, some coming so rapidly that models of cooling and recovery no longer fit. Even the solar wind, the stream of particles flowing outward, has shifted, becoming more turbulent, more chaotic, as though carrying whispers of a foreign influence. Here lies the conflict. The sun is vast, its energy unimaginable. To suggest that a single interstellar object, no matter how large its coma, could rattle such a titan feels impossible. Critics call it cosmic coincidence, a trick of timing. And yet, the anomalies grow harder to dismiss. Observatories across continents record the same rhythms, the same unexpected surges. Even skeptics admit that the star is not behaving as it should. Some scientists speculate that Atlas is acting like a cosmic tuning fork, its magnetic field resonating with the sun's own, amplifying certain frequencies of activity. Others argue that the comet's plasma tail, stretching across millions of kilometers, could be interacting with the heliosphere, distorting the very shield that contains the sun's winds. These are hypotheses at the edge of imagination, but they attempt to answer the most pressing question: why now? And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling reality is that the sun may be entering a state never before observed in recorded history. If Atlas is truly a catalyst, then we are watching not just a cycle, but a transformation. A star, stirred by an interstellar visitor, breaking patterns older than civilization itself. For the first time, the constant has become a variable. This thought unsettles because it pulls the ground from beneath our sense of permanence. The sun is not simply background. It is the anchor of our existence, the silent giver of all life. If it can be shaken, then what foundation is left? We orbit a star that may not be as immune to outside forces as we once believed. And yet, there is awe here too. To witness such a transformation is to be alive at a moment no other generation has seen. The sun, far from being a static furnace, is revealed as dynamic, vulnerable, responsive. The universe is not silent stone, but a web of influence, where even giants can be stirred by passing shadows. So perhaps the question is not whether the sun is changing, but whether humanity can learn to see it not as eternal certainty, but as part of a living cosmos, one in which even our star has its moments of trembling. The Earth is shielded, but not invulnerable. Around the planet stretches the magnetosphere, an invisible armor forged by molten iron in the core. It bends solar winds, deflects radiation, and guards the atmosphere that makes life possible. For centuries, this shield has been reliable, a silent protector. But when the sun stirs into chaos, when its storms crash into Earth, the armor trembles. And now, under the restless influence of Three-Eye Atlas, that trembling has grown louder. The hook strikes. Auroras bloom in skies where they do not belong. In recent months, lights have rippled over Rome, Mexico City, even Cairo, places where generations had never seen the heavens ignite with green fire. For many, it is a spectacle of beauty. But for scientists, it is a warning. Auroras are not decorations. They are the visible scars of a magnetic shield under assault. Here lies the conflict. Each solar storm bombards the magnetosphere, compressing and distorting it. Satellites in orbit shudder, their electronics fried by surges of charged particles. Power grids, vulnerable to geomagnetically induced currents, flicker and fail. In one recent storm, transformers across a continent shut down within seconds, plunging millions into darkness. And beneath this visible chaos, the Earth itself seems to respond. Tremors echoing days after each geomagnetic storm. Coincidence or evidence of a deeper resonance? Data shows patterns that defy comfort. In weeks of heightened solar activity, seismographs record spikes in microquakes. Small, almost imperceptible, but growing in frequency. Some researchers whisper that the magnetosphere is not just a shield, but a bridge, transferring solar agitation into the crust. A wild hypothesis, yet the rhythm lingers. Flare, storm, tremor, again and again. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that the magnetosphere, once thought unbreakable, is showing cracks in its rhythm. If Atlas has amplified the sun into storms beyond expectation, then Earth's shield may be straining at its limits. It bends, it groans, and each groan echoes in stone, in metal, in human lives. The protection we trusted may be less absolute than we believed. This thought unsettles because it forces us to see vulnerability not only in the earth but in the barrier that keeps us alive. We like to think of shields as solid, but this one is invisible, dynamic, fragile. A storm from the sun, stirred by an object from the void, can rattle it to its core. The line between life and destruction is thinner than we imagine, and yet there is wonder too. Auroras spreading across unexpected skies remind us of the beauty hidden in fragility. They are warnings, yes, but also gifts. Reminders that the earth is not isolated, but part of a dance with its star. To watch green fire ripple over deserts and cities is to glimpse both danger and awe, chaos and art woven into the same cosmic thread. So perhaps the question is not whether the shield will hold forever, but how humanity will live with the knowledge that even our strongest protections are part of a universe alive with storms. The magnetosphere is more than an invisible shield. It is the silent wall that separates life from chaos. Without it, the sun's winds would strip away the atmosphere, oceans would thin into vapor, and Earth would be reduced to stone, like Mars, a planet that once flowed with rivers but lost its armor. We rarely think of this shield because it has always been there, constant and unseen. But what happens if it weakens? What if the storms driven by Three-Eye Atlas are already prying at its seams? The hook strikes. Recent data suggests that Earth's magnetic field is not uniform, and in some regions it is fading. The South Atlantic anomaly, stretching from Brazil to Africa, is a zone where the shield thins alarmingly, exposing satellites to radiation and confusing compasses. If such anomalies spread, the consequences could ripple through every layer of civilization. Here lies the conflict. For technology, the loss would be immediate. Satellites in orbit could fry within hours, their circuits overwhelmed. GPS, weather monitoring, communication, all would fail. On the ground, power grids would collapse under surges, airplanes would fly blind, and pipelines would corrode under induced currents. But beyond technology lies something deeper. Biology. Radiation normally deflected by the magnetosphere would pour into the atmosphere, bathing life in invisible fire. Rates of cancer would rise. Ecosystems would twist. Evolution itself might accelerate under a sky that no longer protects. And here comes the mini-climax. The most haunting possibility is that climate itself could shift. Without the magnetic field's stabilizing influence, solar winds could erode the upper atmosphere. Oxygen and water vapor would leak into space, not catastrophically at once, but steadily, silently. Over centuries, Earth could follow the path of Mars, its skies thinning, its oceans shrinking. Humanity would not only fear quakes and storms, it would fear the slow unraveling of the world itself. This thought unsettles because it reframes fragility. We imagine threats as explosions, impacts, sudden collapses, but the weakening of a magnetic field is patient, invisible, a dismantling that unfolds too slowly for daily fear, but too steadily to stop. A civilization might adapt for decades, only to wake one day beneath a sky that no longer belongs to it. And yet, there is awe here too. To study the magnetosphere is to glimpse the profound interconnectedness of Earth. Deep in the molten core, swirling iron generates the field. On the surface, it shields forests and seas. Above, it bends the winds of a star stirred by an interstellar wanderer. It is a reminder that life depends not only on soil and water, but on forces we cannot see, forces that stretch from the heart of the earth to the edge of space. So perhaps the question is not whether the shield will fail, but whether we can learn to see it as fragile now, to recognize its value before it is gone, to prepare not only with science but with humility, knowing that survival depends on forces as invisible as they are indispensable. The Earth's magnetic field is not fixed. Throughout history, it has flipped, reversing north and south, rewriting the compass of the planet. These magnetic pole reversals have happened hundreds of times, each separated by thousands or even millions of years. For the most part, life has endured them, but scientists know that during these transitions the shield weakens, leaving the planet vulnerable to storms from the sun. Now, with 3I Atlas stirring that very star, a haunting question rises. Could this interstellar wanderer trigger the next reversal? The hook strikes. Paleomagnetic records carved into ancient lava flows reveal that Earth's last major reversal occurred about 780,000 years ago. Smaller excursions, failed flips, have happened since, the most recent just 42,000 years ago. If the cycle holds, we may already be due. And now, anomalies in the magnetic field, such as the South Atlantic anomaly, suggest the shield is shifting again. Coincidence? Or a prelude? Here lies the conflict. Magnetic reversals are natural, but their timing is uncertain. Some geophysicists insist that Earth is entering the early stages of one now, regardless of 3I Atlas. Others suggest that the comet's magnetic or plasma resonance could be acting as a catalyst, accelerating a process already in motion. To admit this is to accept that interstellar objects can influence not only the sun, but the very core of our planet. The implications are profound. During a reversal, the magnetic field does not vanish completely, but it weakens dramatically. Radiation surges through the thinning shield. Satellites fail, power grids collapse, and life on the surface faces stresses unseen in human memory. For early humans, such transitions may have shaped migration, survival, even culture. For modern civilization, dependent on fragile technology, the impact could be catastrophic. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling thought is that if Atlas is indeed a trigger, then the reversal may not be centuries away, but unfolding in our lifetime. Already, compasses drift slightly off true north. Already, the field shows signs of shifting. To connect this with a comet may seem speculative, but the rhythm is haunting. A restless sun, a trembling earth, a shield in flux, and a wanderer from the void passing at the same moment. This thought unsettles because it collapses the illusion of separation. We like to think of Earth's core as untouchable, a furnace sealed away from the cosmos. But if a comet can stir the sun, and the sun can rattle the Earth, then even the molten heart of our planet is part of the same chain. Nothing is immune. No layer of existence is beyond influence. And yet, there is wonder here too. To imagine witnessing a magnetic reversal is to stand at the edge of history and prehistory at once. We would see auroras circling the equator, compasses wandering aimlessly, skies alive with fire. It would be terrifying, but also extraordinary. A reminder that Earth itself is alive, still reshaping, still rewriting its rules. So perhaps the question is not whether the poles will flip, but whether 3I Atlas is the hand that tips the balance, and what humanity will become in the shadow of such a cosmic shift. Preparation begins in whispers. Governments rarely announce danger until it can no longer be hidden. And yet, in scientific circles and closed-door meetings, the possibility of a magnetic reversal is no longer dismissed. If Earth's shield weakens, if solar storms grow stronger under the influence of 3-eye Atlas, then civilization itself will be tested. Quietly, plans are being drafted, technologies hardened, contingencies written. The hook strikes. Research agencies across continents have begun mapping weak zones in the magnetic field, identifying where satellites are most at risk, where power grids are most vulnerable, where radiation could strike hardest. In remote labs, engineers experiment with radiation-hardened electronics, building machines that can endure storms from the sun. Airlines adjust flight paths, steering away from polar routes where radiation peaks. The world is adapting, but quietly, cautiously. Here lies the conflict. Preparation is expensive, and admitting the reason invites panic. To the public, power outages are blamed on aging grids, not geomagnetic surges. Satellite failures are explained as technical malfunctions, not magnetic anomalies. Governments tread carefully, balancing truth with fear, unwilling to speak openly of a sky that may be unraveling. And yet, their silence fuels speculation, leaving ordinary people trapped between denial and conspiracy. Behind the scenes, collaboration grows. Data from observatories once locked behind national borders now flows more freely. Even rivals share information, recognizing that magnetic storms care nothing for geopolitics. Military satellites, communication networks, and even nuclear command systems are being shielded, their survival prioritized above all. Survival planning has begun, though few will ever see the documents. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling reality is that no preparation can be complete. Power grids may be hardened, but not every home. Satellites may be protected, but not every device. Radiation shelters may be built, but not for every person. A magnetic reversal, accelerated by cosmic forces, is not something humanity can stop. At best, it can endure, clinging to fragments of stability while the shield remakes itself. This thought unsettles because it reveals the fragility of civilization's foundation. We rely on electricity, satellites, digital networks, invisible systems woven into every part of daily life. Strip them away, and we are left vulnerable, reliant once again on fire, on paper, on memory. A reversal would not only test governments, but the very fabric of modern existence. And yet, there is perspective here too. Humanity has endured before. The last reversal, 780,000 years ago, did not erase life. Even the Lachamp excursion 42,000 years ago left traces of survival. Humans adapting, moving, creating stories that carried them forward. We are fragile, but we are also resilient. Perhaps the true preparation is not only technical, but cultural, learning to see ourselves not as masters of stability, but as wanderers in a trembling cosmos. So perhaps the question is not whether governments can prepare enough, but whether societies can learn to live with the knowledge that their survival rests not only on what they build, but on forces they can never control. What would it look like the first day the shield falters? We imagine disasters as explosions, impacts, sudden ends. But a magnetic collapse would unfold like a storm without sound, invisible yet overwhelming, a wave that begins in the sky and crashes down upon Earth with consequences humanity has never seen in its history. The hook strikes, it begins quietly. Satellites blink, then go dark. GPS signals vanish from the skies. Airplanes flying over oceans lose navigation, their crews forced to return to ancient tools, stars, compasses, instinct. At the same moment, power grids flicker across continents, transformers surge, melt, explode, cities sink into darkness, their towers black against the horizon. The first day is not fire in the streets, but silence. The silence of systems failing all at once. Here lies the conflict. Modern life depends on invisible currents. From banking to medicine, from transport to water supply, everything is bound to electricity and orbiting satellites. Remove them, and civilization staggers. Hospitals switch to backup power, markets freeze, phones die. Panic spreads not because of fire, but because of absence. No information, no light, no certainty. Humanity discovers how quickly confidence collapses when the grid fails. And above all this, the sky burns. Auroras ignite over every latitude, curtains of green and crimson rippling even above deserts and seas. For a moment, the beauty is overwhelming. Billions look upward, stunned, unaware that the spectacle is a symptom of collapse. The same lights that inspire awe are warnings that Earth's shield is faltering, bending beneath the sun storms magnified by 3-eye Atlas. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that this first day is only the beginning. As radiation pours through the weakened field, flights are grounded, satellites crippled, and entire nations disconnected. Seismographs record tremors in places long quiet, as if the Earth itself is resonating with the chaos above. Humanity, unprepared, stands at the threshold of a world where technology, order, and even the sense of safety dissolve in hours. This thought unsettles because it strips away the illusion of permanence. We believe our systems are strong, but they are fragile threads woven across a trembling earth. Cut them, and the fabric unravels. Civilization is not stone, but glass, and the first crack spreads faster than we can follow. And yet, there is awe, too. To witness such a day would be to stand in history, to see the cosmos revealed not as silent, but alive. The auroras, the tremors, the silence, all part of a reminder that humanity is small, fragile, and yet able to feel wonder even in collapse. To live in such a moment is to see both the terror and the beauty of existence, side by side. So perhaps the question is not what happens on the first day of collapse, but what humanity does on the second. Whether it clings to fear or begins again in the light of a sky that has shown its true power. The second day does not bring relief, it brings awareness. On the first day, confusion reigned. Satellites gone, grids dark, skies burning. But people still waited, hoping it was temporary, a blackout that would pass. By the second sunrise, hope begins to thin. The silence stretches, and humanity starts to understand that something deeper has broken. The hook strikes. Cities awaken to streets without traffic lights, markets without transactions, hospitals rationing fuel for generators. Planes remain grounded, their crews unable to navigate without satellites. Ports fall silent, ships stranded without GPS. In homes, water pumps fail, refrigerators warm, and the glow of screens, the symbol of modern life, remains absent. The second day is not only dark, it is hollow. Here lies the conflict. Human behavior fractures. In some places, people gather, sharing candles, pooling food, watching auroras ripple overhead as though they are omens. In others, fear sharpens into chaos. Stores are raided. Mistrust spreads. Rumors grow unchecked, traveling faster than truth in the absence of communication. Some claim the end has come. Others whisper of governments hiding the truth. The vacuum left by silence fills with stories, and not all of them bring calm. Meanwhile, Scientists and officials scramble. Emergency radios, shielded from surges, crackle with faint voices. Teams attempt to reboot power grids piece by piece, but each restart risks another surge as storms from the sun continue to batter Earth's weakened shield. In space, satellites hang dead, silent monuments to a sky turned hostile. And still, seismographs record tremors, as if the Earth below mirrors the instability above. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that by the second day, the collapse feels irreversible. People begin to measure not what they have lost, but how they will survive. Generators hum where fuel remains, wells are opened where pumps fail, old maps are pulled from drawers. Farmers watch the sky, wondering whether the storms above will shift the seasons, whether planting or harvest can still be trusted. Civilization, stripped of its digital skin, stares into its reflection and sees how fragile it has always been. This thought unsettles because it reduces progress to perspective. All our satellites, grids, and networks are revealed as temporary, threads stretched across a world that can cut them without warning. The second day does not destroy humanity, but it shows humanity itself, vulnerable, divided, and suddenly ancient again. And yet, there is resilience too. Across villages, towns, and cities, people adapt. Fires are lit, notes are written, songs are sung. Even in the silence, humanity reaches for connection. The cosmos may have stripped away the machines that bound us, but it has not stripped away the instinct to endure together. The trembling of earth and the silence of the sky cannot erase that. So perhaps the question is not whether humanity can survive the second day, but whether it can learn from it, to see fragility not only as weakness, but as the reminder that in every collapse lies the chance to build again. By the third day, the illusion of a passing blackout is gone. What began as disruption is now recognized as collapse. People no longer wait for the lights to return. They begin to adapt, to improvise, to survive. And for the first time since the storms began, governments and nations, stripped of their usual rivalries, are forced to face the reality together. This is not temporary. This is a new world. The hook strikes. Emergency broadcasts crackle across old analog radios. The last technology resistant to the sun surges. A voice, distant and fractured, speaks not of hours or days, but of weeks. Weeks of disruption, weeks of storms, weeks of tremors. The message spreads. This crisis is not ending soon. Around the globe, survivors understand that life must bend to the chaos, not wait for its end. Here lies the conflict. Nations that once guarded information now share it. Scientists transmit seismic data through whatever channels remain. Observatories, some crippled, some still alive, link their signals across continents, piecing together a broken picture of a star in overdrive. Military forces, once focused on borders, turn to humanitarian aid, deploying supplies, evacuating vulnerable cities, protecting hospitals and water systems. Collaboration emerges not from trust, but from necessity. But even cooperation cannot erase fragility. Food supply chains stall as transport collapses. Medicine stocks dwindle as factories lie silent. In cities, rationing begins. People line up for water, for bread, for fuel. Every day feels heavier, as if gravity itself has deepened. The earth trembles beneath, the sky burns above, and humanity feels pressed between forces too vast to resist. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling truth is that by the third day, survival is no longer an individual struggle. It is collective. A single nation cannot shield itself from storms that cross all skies, from quakes that rattle all continents. Humanity is forced to see itself as one species, bound not by choice but by necessity, standing on the same trembling ground. For the first time, the enemy is not other humans. It is the cosmos itself. This thought unsettles because it strips away the illusions of control and rivalry. Borders dissolve when satellites die, when skies ignite, when seas tremble. The power that nations once wielded shrinks in the face of forces that care nothing for flags. What remains is the raw truth. Survival belongs not to the strongest, but to the most united. And yet, there is wonder here too. In villages once divided by conflict, people share food. In cities plunged into dark, musicians play on street corners, their songs rising against silence. Even in the tremors, even beneath auroras that paint the equator, the instinct to connect endures. The cosmos may shake us, but it cannot erase the fire that binds us. So perhaps the question is not whether humanity can endure the third day, but whether it can carry the lesson forward. That in the trembling of earth and the storms of the sun, survival is not found in isolation, but in unity. Far above the trembling earth, beyond the auroras and storms, a wanderer drifts closer. Three-Eye Atlas, once a faint blur on distant telescopes, now burns with an intensity that cannot be ignored. Each night, observatories that still survive record its swelling coma, a halo of plasma stretching wider than planets. It is no longer only an object of curiosity. It has become a looming presence, an intruder whose shadow falls across the entire solar system. The hook strikes. Atlas does not behave like an ordinary comet. Its brightness grows faster than models predict. Jets of gas flare not at random, but in patterns, as though pulsing. The tail, long as a planetary orbit, bends in ways that defy expectations, curling not with solar wind, but against it, as if resisting the star's grasp. For astronomers, this is not a traveler, it is an anomaly. Here lies the conflict. To some, Atlas is nothing more than ice and dust, magnified by fear and coincidence. To others, its behavior suggests something more, a structure of plasma interacting with the sun in ways unknown, some whisper of resonance, of magnetism vast enough to disturb a star. And every time the sun flares, every time the earth trembles, eyes turn upward and wonder, is Atlas the cause or the witness? Data adds to the unease. Spectrographs reveal strange signatures, elements rare in ordinary comets, traces of metals that gleam unnaturally. Its coma expands faster than it should, as if fueled not only by heat, but by some inner reserve. Models built to predict its decay fail again and again, each time underestimating its persistence. Atlas refuses to fade. It grows. And here comes the mini-climax. The unsettling reality is that Atlas has become more than a comet. It is a symbol. To scientists, it is the boundary of knowledge, the edge of what we can explain. To societies, it is an omen, the interstellar visitor, whose arrival coincides with storms and quakes. To the Earth itself, it may be the hand pressing down on fault lines, stirring both star and stone. Whether it is cause or coincidence, its presence feels like a weight on the world. This thought unsettles because it forces us to confront the limits of vision. We can see Atlas. We can measure its light, its gases, its orbit, but we cannot yet explain its influence. It exists in the space between observation and understanding, a reminder that the universe still keeps secrets too vast for our equations. We watch it grow brighter, and we wonder if brightness is warning. And yet, there is awe here too. To witness such a visitor is to stand on the threshold of cosmic history. Few generations ever see an interstellar object. Fewer still see one so strange, so disruptive, so luminous. Whatever its nature, Atlas has tied our star, our planet, and our species into its path. It is not just passing through, it has become part of our story. So perhaps the question is not what Atlas is, but what it means. Whether as trigger, omen, or mirror, it has arrived to remind us that even in the vast silence between stars, nothing travels without leaving ripples. Science is built on caution, hypotheses are tested, peer-reviewed, and tempered by skepticism. But there are moments when caution gives way to imagination, when the evidence defies existing models and researchers, pressed by reality, begin to ask questions that sound more like myth than science. With three-eye Atlas swelling, with the sun restless, with the earth trembling, such a moment has arrived. The hook strikes. In hushed conferences and unpublished drafts, some scientists now dare to suggest that Atlas may be doing more than passing through. It may be altering the sun itself. The comet's coma, vast as half a star, could be reshaping the heliosphere. Its magnetic field, if strong enough, might not simply disturb solar winds, but amplify them. The sun, once thought to be self-contained, may be in resonance with an intruder from beyond. Here lies the conflict. To accept this possibility is to shatter one of the oldest beliefs in astronomy, that stars are immune to passing bodies. Comets come and go, planets orbit in silence, but the sun endures unchanged. To suggest otherwise feels like heresy, a step backward into superstition. And yet, the sun's recent violence resists all other explanations. Flares rise too fast, sunspots cluster too strangely. The timing with Atlas is too sharp. Skepticism cracks under the weight of coincidence. Some propose that Atlas could act as a catalyst for a new solar cycle, one more violent than any on record. Others whisper of a deeper fear, that resonance with Atlas might destabilize the sun's magnetic field entirely, pushing it into decades of chaos. If so, then what humanity now sees, the quakes, the storms, the auroras, may be only the beginning. The true crescendo could lie ahead. And here comes the mini-climax. The most haunting hypothesis is that Atlas is not only altering the present, but shaping the future of our star. If the sun's rhythm has been broken, if its cycles have been disrupted, then Earth will live not in stability, but in turbulence for generations. Civilization would not simply endure a storm, it would inherit a restless star. This thought unsettles because it redefines fragility. We are not only vulnerable to quakes beneath or storms above, we are bound to a star whose temperament may be shifting, perhaps permanently, under the touch of an interstellar wanderer. To live in such a universe is to accept that even the most constant light in the sky can be changed. And yet, there is awe here too. To imagine watching a star in transformation is to glimpse cosmic history unfolding. If Atlas is reshaping the sun, then we are witnesses to an event no civilization has ever seen. It is terrifying, yes, but also extraordinary. Proof that the cosmos is alive, dynamic, unpredictable. So perhaps the question is not whether Atlas is changing the sun, but whether humanity is ready to live beneath a star that may never return to the rhythm it once knew. The story has circled from stone to sky, from trembling ground to burning star, from ancient myths to modern science, and always at the center, three presences: Earth, restless beneath our feet, the sun, stirred into storms, and three-eyes Atlas, the wanderer from the interstellar dark. Alone, each is powerful. Together, they form a chain, one that has bound humanity into the drama of the cosmos. The hook strikes. We thought Earth was solid, yet it shakes. We thought the sun was constant, yet it flares beyond control. We thought the universe was distant, yet a visitor from the void may already be reshaping our world. Certainty has collapsed, and in its place lies something harder, sharper, but also more profound, the realization that we are woven into a universe alive with resonance. Here lies the conflict. Humanity craves safety, permanence, the illusion that the ground will not tremble, the sky will not fall, the stars will not change. But the past weeks have stripped away those illusions. Earthquakes multiply. Auroras burn in skies once dark. The sun, defying its own cycles, rages as if awakened, and above it all, Atlas glows brighter as though watching, as though waiting. And here comes the climax, the possibility that this is no coincidence, but connection. Atlas stirring the sun stirring the earth trembling beneath our cities and lives, a chain that stretches across millions of miles, linking interstellar wanderers to the molten core of our planet. Science may hesitate to admit it, but the rhythm is undeniable. The cosmos is not separate from us. It is within us, around us, shaping every breath, every stone, every moment. This thought unsettles because it redefines what it means to exist. We are not masters of Earth, not even tenants of stability. We are participants in a universe that moves without asking, that trembles and burns and collides. Our survival is not guaranteed. Our permanence is not real. And yet, in this fragility lies a deeper truth, that life is extraordinary precisely because it persists against such odds. And yet, there is awe here too. To stand beneath trembling skies, to watch auroras ripple while the ground shakes, is to feel connected not only to danger, but to wonder. The same chain that threatens also reminds us that we belong to the cosmos. We are not separate, not abandoned. We are part of its rhythm. Fragile, yes, but also conscious, able to see, to know, to marvel. So perhaps the true question is not whether Atlas will pass, or whether the sun will calm, or whether the earth will rest. The question is what we will carry from this moment, whether fear will blind us, or whether wonder will guide us. For in the end, even if the ground trembles and the star burns, we are alive now in the midst of it, witnesses to a universe that is anything but silent.